Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Emhauser. You can find me on all the places, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, at Hawk Blogger. And this morning you can find me with really the only guy I would want to talk to after the Seahawks put a whooping on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Matt Hasselbeck, how are you doing?
It felt good. It felt good. It was great. I'm doing well. That was a fun game. Week two, the next day, the morning after week two feels a lot better than the morning after week one. That was
Doesn't
pretty
it?
cool. Great road victory. Great road win. They basically did what they set out to do in all the things. And, so they got the win, and then they got the win the way they said they were going to get the win. That's really neat.
Well, I was thinking about you a lot during that game, walking into that stadium, which is no longer Heinz Field, but they still have Heinz in certain spots, and your family doesn't have Heinz in the household anymore. I know it's not probably your
Can I just tell a quick story about that
yeah,
stadium?
please,
So
please.
right after we lost the Super Bowl to the Steelers, my mom and I were like the Campbell's Chunky Soup spokespeople, like us and I think like Donovan McNabb and his mom. And then the McNabbs, yeah, I guess their contract expired, and so they were going to do Ben Roethlisberger and his mom. Well, Ben was in a motorcycle accident, like real serious. It was like not great. So they were like, "Oh shoot, we're still got this commercial, and we're shooting it at Heinz Field." And so they brought in like all like the steel curtain type guys, like the great Steelers of all time. And so it was like them and me and my mom for like 5 days in Pittsburgh. And it was just like a sort of a tough place to be right after you lose the Super Bowl to the Steelers. And so
Yeah,
we shot these commercials, and the guys, in the steel curtain were incredibly nice. It's a great city. I mean, it's very like,
underrated city, right?
it's great. It's great, especially in the summer. So,
Mm-hmm.
so like there is that little bit of like, fingernails on a chalkboard with it. But there's some, I mean, if we're being real, there's some interesting, like good people, and it's a good town and all that kind of stuff. So, but all that being said, it's always a good day when you beat the Steelers.
I have to admit, walking through the city and the stadium and talking to a bunch of the fans and getting to know people. I didn't dislike them as much as I wanted to. It was a pretty likable group of people and the folks around
Yeah,
the
and
city.
smart football fans too. Like
Yeah,
they're not just wearing a jersey, like they're wearing a jersey, and they could literally tell you like, what the Seahawks are good at and what they got to stop, and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
It's a good town. They travel well as well.
You mentioned the chunky soup commercials. What was it like doing that with your mom?
Well, it was great. It was great. But we eventually got fired because their like focus groups, they said, "Oh, you need to get like his real mom because this doesn't look real. He looks so old and she looks so young." So they fired us. And it was like really good money too. So I remember telling my mom, like, "Hey mom, we're getting fired." My agent called, like, "We're getting fired from Campbell's Chunky Soup." I told her why. And she was like, "Oh, that's so great." I'm like, no, that's not great. Like, no, but they think I'm so young. I'm like, I think it's more like I just look so old, it's like it's the combination. But no, that is my mom. But it was super fun. We did another 1 year. We spent like a week in Toronto filming with a bunch of guys and their moms. Like I don't know, I'll mess it all up, but it was like maybe 6 or 7 guys, like really good players on different teams, and the moms hung out, and the guys were hanging out in Toronto. It was a good time. Yeah, those are special things. You don't think you realize it at the time how cool they are, but definitely very, very cool.
Well, before we get into talking about this game and another one coming up, uh, the Steelers Super Bowl for you. I know it's probably not your favorite topic, but I'm curious. I mean, you've lived a life that not many have led, right? And there's not many people that have even stepped on the field as a quarterback for a Super Bowl team. But I'm curious how you look back at that. Like, is it with time, is it a memory that you kind of cherish? Is it still something that burns? Like, how do you think about that?
No, it burns. It burns. It burns. But I just think like the journey is also special, and the lessons learned are special. And sometimes you learn life lessons that you could never learn in a win. You learn them in a loss, and that goes for football or anything else. But no, it's not like the only thing. I think about the Super Bowls that we didn't get to that I think we should have gotten to. Like I definitely think about that. I mean, I think about that Super Bowl in the sense that we were the best team in football that year. Like we were. We just weren't the best team on the football field that day. Like we made too many mistakes and we didn't make plays. We gave up big plays. There were things that,
A lot of
you know,
injuries.
There were a couple of injuries, like a domino effect at one position that ended up costing us and hurting us. But but that's sports and that's football. And, the Indianapolis Colts probably feel that way. Like they should not have ever lost to the Steelers that year. The Bengals probably should have never have lost to the Steelers that year. They were a wild card team, but guess what? They went and did it. They went and did it in the playoffs. And so that's football. I mean, the New York Giants won a Super Bowl as a wild card team. It's it happens. My dad won a Super Bowl. I think they might have been a wild card team with the Raiders. It's I don't sit there and I'm really that upset about it. It's fun to kind of joke about the Steelers and that kind of thing. But no, I think for me and my teammates that were part of that, and I think even Seahawks fans, we don't feel great about that Super Bowl. We should have finished the job. We should have brought a Lombardi back to Seattle that year. Now, I'm grateful that, the Seahawks were able to do it a few years later, but no, it should have happened that year. In 06, we should have come back. But we didn't. And so like I said, life lessons, and you learn from them and hopefully improve.
Yeah, well, I'm staring on my wall a picture of you holding up the NFC Championship trophy, and it was the two Super Bowls the Seahawks did not win. Both have pretty large asterisks by them, and before the whole 1 yard line against the Patriots, that is what everyone thinks about. That game was certainly one that was burning in a lot of the stomachs of Seahawks fans for a while.
I remember my first day at the Green Bay Packers when I got drafted there. They were getting their NFC Championship rings because they had just lost the Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos, the John Elway year. And, they were all talking about what was the best game you've ever been a part of? Because Andy Reid was kind of all right, let's talk about this. This isn't a bad day. It's a good day. Let's celebrate the day. And I just remember being how are these guys so disappointed about an NFC Championship ring? I later understood, but the point of my story is that they all talked about, I thought they were going to say the best day was when they won the Super Bowl in New Orleans against the Patriots, against Bill Parcells and the Patriots. And they all agreed the best moment that they ever had in football was winning the NFC Championship game at home in front of their home crowd. And it makes total sense to me now, because when we were at our place winning the NFC Championship game at our place in front of our fans, not a neutral corporate fan base or whatever, but our season ticket holders with our confetti. And it just was it was an incredible moment. And had we even won the Super Bowl, I don't know that Detroit would have felt the same way as what was then Quest Field. I just don't know if it could have felt the same. And it all kind of clicked when I remember back to what, Favre and those guys were talking about. It made perfect sense.
Well, so let's talk about this game that the had a more pleasant outcome in Pittsburgh. I assume you got a chance to watch it. What was your impression of that game?
A lot of great things. I mean, Mike Macdonald said, "Hey, here's what we need to be. We need to run the ball more. We need more play action." I mean, when you look at just even the passing game alone, there were chunk plays all on play action. A little flash fake counts as play action, but what does that even do, really? You know what I mean? It just gets the quarterback in a little bit of a rhythm. It was actual play action, hard, feels like a run, pause the tape. Is this a run or a throw? It's a throw. Shots downfield. It was awesome. There were 2-man routes at some time. I hate 2-man routes. I like when there's 5 eligible receivers, but it was such a good sell. It was oh, here they go running inside zone again. Whoa, wait, what is touchdown? It was that. So it was 24-yard gain, 17-yard gain, 14, double-digit yard gains for first downs. So that was incredible to see. The run game, obviously, being the hammer, not the nail, kind of a run game, explosive runs. That was incredible. Check with me, intelligent runs. We're not just going to run the ball to run the ball. We're going to start in empty. It's a known passing situation. Now we're going to come back. We got a back in the backfield. Now we've got we can go left or we can go right, away from whatever you're going to do defensively if you have an overload blitz. And you're going to do none of that. You're going to play coverage, and then we're just going to run it at you, run it right at you. It was great. So I think those were huge things. Getting turnovers were huge things. And I think probably one of the other things that was most exciting is I think it was maybe 3 sacks, all 3 sacks with a 4-man rush. If you can get a 4-man rush on the road, create pressure and get sacks, it just makes everybody who's in the back end so much better. And some of those people have been injured or struggling or whatever. So you want to like carry the guys around you by like stepping up your game. That's what the D line did, I thought. And yeah, it was great. I mean, it's hard to find something that was really negative. It was a great game.
How much, in your experience, does the quarterback have say and freedom at the line of scrimmage to determine whether it's a run play or a pass play? Like, that's always something I'm curious about when it's like, hey, the Seahawks aren't running enough or this team isn't running enough. How much is it the quarterback checking out of something that the fans would have no way to know?
There's things in your toolbox is kind of like how they say it. Like, here's a tool in your toolbox, but they're usually there's audibles to like get us out of a disaster. Like there's going to be a disaster. There's going to be a sack. We're going to be hot. There's going to be a tackle for a loss. So then there's audibles for that situation. And then there's another thing, which is called like an advantage check. We don't have to get out of the play that we're currently in, but it would be a huge advantage if we happen to have this play on against this defense. We could catch them for an explosive. And like, those are the two different things. I think what's happened recently in the NFL, maybe in the last 10 years, what these, young guru type play callers are doing is they'll call 2 or 3 plays in the huddle. Like, I know when I got to the Indianapolis Colts, I had sort of felt like, I was later in my career. I'm like, well, what more football am I going to learn? I've kind of been in every offense. Like, what am I going to learn? And Andrew Luck was running kind of the Jim Harbaugh Stanford offense. And really what they were doing just about every play is they would call like one play or another play or another play. It was like 3 plays. It would be like, I'll give it like a simple version. It'd be like 93 blast, kills to 98 handoff solid, alerts to 200 jet dragon. And so you'd get up there. If it was the first play, you'd say, hey, let it roll. Like first play, we're going to run the first play, 93 blast. Or we'd get up there and be like, hey, kill it. Like we're killing to the second play. All right, we're running 98 handoff solid. Or you get up there and like the run to the left's no good. The run to the right's no good. Got to throw it situation. You'd say, hey, alert. Touch your temples like that with two hands. Alert. Everyone knows we're running the third play. And so like that's it's not really the quarterback deciding. It's like the game plan was decided by the coaches during the week. And so you're trusting them to have a good game plan. You want to get plays that complement each other well, where there's never a defense where all 3 plays stink. And so that's the challenge. It's not like the quarterback's just like waving off a pitch he doesn't want to throw. It's not that, which I think, I'm sure Mike Holmgren made it sound like that at times. But it's not that. It's truly like you're just trying to execute the game plan that the assistant coaches put out.
Well, yeah, there was one play in particular I was kind of curious about in this one, and it was a disaster. The Seahawks have a short yardage play and end up not going with the tush push that they'd done with AJ Barner a couple times, and it turns into a play action pass that turns into an interception. I asked Mike Macdonald yesterday, like, hey, tush push, the idea is if you're in short yardage, it's kind of your play. So you guys have done it twice. You've succeeded twice. Why was there this decision to go a different direction on that play? Here's what Mike said yesterday.
Can you get over a yard in it in that situation? That was part of the conversation. Not saying that we wouldn't do it for a yard or more, but right now that was part of the reason we didn't do it.
He also said, Matt, earlier that morning that they probably should have gotten out of it given the look they were given on defense. Is that a quarterback commentary or is that a coach commentary?
It can be both. I would hear it as a quarterback one, but you'll never know for sure. But like, yeah, that's what. And sometimes it's hard. Like sometimes, especially when you're under center and you're not used to being under center. Like I was very, very used to being under center. But just getting back to that Jim Harbaugh play, we had this incredible short yardage play. It was really Andrew Luck's play, but like we just called it the short yardage play. Like we all knew it was quarterback sneak or outside zone or a throw. Like a sprint out. Like there's no defense you could invent where all 3 plays were really bad. And there were a lot of times like, hey, we just didn't like our matchup with the quarterback sneak. Like we didn't like the matchup with the guys, their D line with our O line or whatever. And so like we just got so good at it. But it wasn't that easy for me to see, like, all right, I got to see the leverage of the defensive end that's lined up on the tight end. So like when I'm crouching down under center and I got to see like over there that angle, like sometimes you make a bad decision, you make a bad read, or maybe it just like takes this like a little bit of a learning curve if it's new to you, and you got to try to do it like subtly. You don't want to be like, oh, can we run outside zone over there? Like it's just like, well, the middle linebacker is basically unblocked. And he's like, if he gets off to the races, I mean, they're not idiots too. Like they know if they're stacking the both A gaps and both B gaps, you're probably going to try to get outside. So, no, that's the kind of stuff that you learn in film review. And I think short yardage is the situation where you don't ever really get short yardage goal line. You don't really ever get to practice those live in practice because you want to protect your own guys. You don't cut in practice. Like there's all these different things. You're not going to submarine. So, those are things you sort of have to learn in game situations, unfortunately. But like once you learn it, it's good. I think one thing, if you're looking for positives with what the Seahawks have done with kind of like the tush push formation in personnel, I think week 1, they had Jalen Milroe up and they used him. Well, how it works, like in the NFL, it's like it's usually at least a 4-game breakdown. So you're going to have to, for the next 4 opponents after that San Fran game, they're going to have a plan for every short yardage defense if Milroe's up and if they're in that formation. And it's going to start with like the quarterback sneak, tush push, whatever, but then every play off it. Now, all of a sudden, you got the AJ Barner thing. You got to have a plan for that for the next 4 weeks. So whether or not those are even successful, what you are doing is you're taking probably, I don't know, like an hour to 4 hours away from your opponent in their preparation, where they got to have a plan and teach their players a plan for all that crap that may or may not even happen. And it's taking time away from real tendencies where they can say, oh, hey, when it's Gainwell, when it's Charbonnet, when it's, like whatever, when JSN's in the slot, when he's outside, it's just, there's not enough time in the day. And so like back in the day, you used to do that with empty formations. Like empty was this, wild and crazy thing, or a one wildcat play, and just do it at a different personnel groupings. And the end result usually is defenses are like, you know what, let's just stay basic. Let's just stay simple. Let's just make sure our guys know how to not blow an assignment. And that's ultimately a win for you as an offense.
How do you look at quarterbacks? How do you assess quarterbacks? First time you get your eyes on a quarterback, what are you paying attention to?
Mostly the negatives, like the non-negotiable negatives.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, for real, like, I worked with Steve Young for a long time, and he used to say all the time, he's like, anybody can play quarterback from the 20 to the 20. Anybody. It's what happens inside the 20. It's what, every coach I ever had would, start every season with me, maybe with the exception of Jim Zorn, but every other guy, because Jim Zorn was like a next level. It took you like Mr. Miyagi. Like it would be like 3 weeks till you realize like, oh, he got me. You know what I mean? Like wax on, wax off, like, that kind of thing. But no, but every other coach would just say quarterbacks, third down, like that's your job. Like that's why you get paid more money than most of your team, like third down, like that's you're the difference maker on third down. So I just think like red zone, third down, negative plays. I think Tom Brady said it really well when he went into the Hall of Fame, in the Patriots Hall of Fame. He said, I think the thing that I did the best is that I kept my team out of as many negative plays as I could. And a lot of times those things didn't go noticed, but Bill Belichick noticed them, and he thanked Coach Belichick for like that sort of like, steering him. But then there's also just the clutch factor. And like, you got to make the throw the one time that it's there to be made. And some guys have that factor. Some guys don't. You saw last night, Baker Mayfield did it while hurt, did it. Like, it's just like, he's literally putting the team on his back, kind of saying like, hey, just like ride with me. Let's go. Like, like you can count on me. So like, there's a lot of different things that go into it, but usually you can just like cross somebody off the list if they don't have one of the things, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought those things up, and I'm glad you brought up last night, because there's going to be a constant conversation among Seahawks fans and others, national media all year, about Geno Smith, Sam Darnold. And Geno Smith had a pretty forgettable game last night, and for a lot of Seahawks fans, it was kind of like, wow. Yeah, I don't miss seeing those interceptions and those decisions. And, he kind of had an article, said some things yesterday. Like, I finally got my team. I felt like I was always trying to replace Russell Wilson. And then he added a comment at the end. I didn't feel like I fit the aesthetic of the Seattle organization. The Raiders just fit me. I'm curious, like, watching Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. I mean, how do you kind of assess those two guys?
Well, listen, I think Geno's a good player. I think one of the things that Geno really did well and endeared himself to so many, especially teammates, is the night he beat Russ, against Denver. And he said, I didn't write back. And like, that was like next level. Like, that's it. Like, that's it. Earmuff, skin like an armadillo. Like, you're a leader. Like, I'm invincible. I'm bulletproof. And I don't know, this year, I just haven't seen that. He's the guy double middle fingering the 12s in Seattle. Like, stupid comments like that. Like, lame, dude. Like, be the guy that didn't write back. Like, that's what's special about you. Like, all the scars that you have from all your different journeys, starting in New York with the Jets and all the different great quarterbacks you backed up and learned from, you became a really, really good player, a really good quarterback, a really good leader. And hand in hand with Pete Carroll, I get it. You got something special, but like, I don't know. Those just sound like excuses to me, really. But I like him as a player. I think he's talented. I think he's getting a little loose and forgetting what made him who he is, I think. And I think he'll see that someday. He probably doesn't see it now. That's, but for Seahawks fans, like, you could have done another year of that, which I think was what they were going to try to do. Mm-hmm. And instead, Mike Macdonald has this idea in his head of what really they want to be offensively. They want to be more like what Kyle Shanahan has been, with like shifts and motions, using a fullback as a focal point, like really spreading the ball around. Running game is like how we do everything, with pass protection and like all the stuff. And that's what you saw. Like, that's what, and sometimes it's easier to do that with a brand new quarterback, maybe a younger guy that doesn't have as many, like, well, this is how I like to do it, or this is really how I want to play. So I think it's going to work out okay, like even better. But yeah, I think yesterday was an example, Sunday was an example of what the Seahawks want to be identity wise on offense.
Yeah, I have a fun video to play for you in a second. Before I do, one more thing on Geno. It was Pete Carroll comments after the game. I know you played one season with Pete, and he said, "I'm not supporting some of the choices there," in reference to Geno. "I need to see what happened, though. I want to see if he had other options." It seems like as negative as you're going to get from Pete.
Are we talking about like the on the field? Is that what you're talking about?
On the field, the interceptions, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't sound. I mean, listen, Pete Carroll, it's all about the ball. Like, what happened to it's all about the ball. No, I listen. I think Pete's great about really protecting his team at the podium. There's a lot of head coaches that are real quick to throw their guys under the bus. And what I really loved about Pete, I thought he did a great job of, is he protects his team like really, really well at the podium, even when he absolutely, 100%, he knows he's like basically lying through his teeth, what he really thinks. And then he comes in the locker room or in the team meeting room, and he has what he calls Tell the Truth Monday. And I thought he did a great job of this, at least when I was playing for him. He did not care who you were, how much money you made, where you were drafted, if you were a starter or practice squad, like he would call it like it was. And I just really appreciated that. I think you just like the authenticity is so good, and it builds like this chemistry and this DNA of your program where it's like, hey, this is like a complete meritocracy. It's about like who's performing versus like, because it's not like that everywhere. And so like when you get there, it's just so refreshing when it's why you have the courage to go make Russell Wilson a rookie draft pick, your starting quarterback in a 3-man quarterback battle where he's not expected to be the guy. He's just like, no, best guy's going to play. I don't care. And so I appreciate that he does that when the doors are closed.
I want to play a video of another coach. This is Mike Macdonald after the victory yesterday. And hopefully you could see this, Matt. There's Mike right here in the middle. But I want you to see the celebration and Mike's management through this as he moonwalks out of there.
Listen, save this video. Everyone, save this video, clip this video. If you're ever at a wedding reception and you get pushed into the circle, okay, you have two options. You just do the Hitch, the movie Hitch right here. You just stay right here, just stay at your home, don't do anything crazy, or just right here. You do the little Mike, like moonwalk. That's what we're calling it. It's the Mike moonwalk. Just get out of the circle. Real subtle, real covert. Well done.
You are a coach now. You've had relationships with various coaches through your career. Like, what is the vibe between a good coach relationship with players? Like, how does that?
Well, just first of all, like that's
well,
like the best. That's the moment right there. Like that's the best moment of the week. Like you grind, like you don't sleep, you grind, you're spending so much time, all your energy and effort is into like getting one win, try to go 1-0. And like, that's the moment right there that you're kind of doing it for. And so like, that's like an epic. I mean, I remember in college, Tom Coughlin was my head coach and we were scared of him. Like we were like if I was like this scared of Mike Holmgren, I was that scared of Tom Coughlin, like even more. And I just remember we go back to Syracuse, his alma mater. He's like in the Hall of Fame there. He's an ACC legend, like all this stuff. And like, we just beat him down. Like we beat him down. It was like 31-0 or something crazy like that. And we're in the locker room after, just like that, celebrating. But it was like, you ever seen like baseball players after they win the World Series and they're shaking champagne bottles? That was us with water bottles, all on Tom Coughlin, which is like, even now I get a little nervous even saying it. It was so much fun. And he was like a strict guy, but he was just like, yeah, it's all good. Like, this is the whole thing. This is what we're doing it for. And he was like a human in that moment. It was like almost like, it was crazy. It was awesome. And so like, there's an art to it. And, Mike, but nowadays you get caught like on camera and it goes viral and it's on someone's reel and, all that, but it's a cool moment. And I think as, the relationship between coach and player, it's hard because you want to be like really tight with the guys and one of the guys, but at the same time, you got to make tough decisions and you got to be, you got to be the head coach. And so like everyone has a different style. I don't think there's one style that works, but, definitely that's like a fun moment. Like those are the moments you miss.
A couple more questions for you, Matt. I mean, on that, there was an interesting kind of dynamic with the first week to the second week for Mike Macdonald. First week, Reek Woolen, cornerback, has some really poor plays and poor game overall. Mike Macdonald doesn't pull punches. He mentions that he's going to be challenged for his snaps. Ends up playing this week. But that's one game. Like one game, you go from having your starter be the starter to potentially not. As a player, how much was that like you appreciate the coach holding someone accountable because you want every player held accountable versus, man, this guy doesn't have our back when something goes wrong. He immediately pulls the plug. Like, what was the player perspective on that?
Yeah, well, I think you appreciate when, like, I don't think he was like outwardly trying to like throw anybody under the bus during the week. I think he was sort of like bobbing and weaving, like dodging questions, but like, like, yeah, we might make a change. It could happen. It was like that. Like nobody's job is like in stone, like written in stone. Like, but I that's why I think just going back to like when you turn the tape on and you're in the meeting with the coaches and they just call it out, like they say it how it is. Like dysfunctional teams just like blow by it because like, oh, I don't want to create a problem with like I'll give you an example. There was a safety that played for the Seahawks that I think like had a big personality and like, recently had a big personality and like energy, probably a great leader on the team and in the locker room, guys love him. But like, to me, he was like overdoing it and out of position and like causing some more big plays against the defense than he was creating. And like, I don't know what it was like. I wasn't in the locker room, but like what it should have been like is like, we're going to call it out every single time. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming it wasn't getting called out because it wasn't changing. And so like, that's not great. That's not it. So the flip side of that would be kind of like what I think happened here. Trying to protect the player in the media because you don't want him to lose his confidence. And it's honestly not on one player anyway. That's true. And then now instead of like giving the opponent an exact blueprint of like, oh, here's who's going to start in our secondary. Here's who's playing safety. Here's who's playing nickel. Here's what we're going to do. It was like this unknown. So you keep it in house and you say, hey, listen, like we're looking for people to make plays. We're going to give you a chance. We're going to give you a chance. We haven't given up on you. We're giving you a chance. And together we're going to do it. And how else are we going to do it? We're not going to blitz as much. D-line. we're going to leave 7 in pass. We're in pass coverage. So it's up to you 4 to like get a rush, like help us out. We're not leaving these guys on an island. Like we're going up against a Hall of Famer. Like, you kind of gas them up, in an authentic way. You're telling the truth, and you're not throwing your dirty laundry out there. You're not helping them with their scouting report, but there's a way you do it. And, like, again, I'm not in there, but like, that feels like the way that they're doing it. It feels like, and I think as a player, like you really, really appreciate when you don't like, oh, we're just going to skip that one. It doesn't fit what we want to do. It does, or we're going to just skip that because that would be an uncomfortable conversation to have. No, I think you grow when you get comfortable being uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable sometimes to make corrections or to call it out. And, I think the results speak for themselves. It looks like, that's kind of what the Seahawks did defensively. They protected guys and they played better team defense. And quite honestly, I thought the D-line stepped up.
All right, last thing before we get you out of here, Matt. This happens to be sandwiching 2 opponents that you have some interesting Seahawks history with, right? Steelers, and then to go to the Saints. And you played in the Beastquake game. And, everyone talks about the Beastquake run. I remember you throwing 4 touchdowns that game, if I remember right. Like,
I just remember the interception to start the game. That's all I remember.
You threw one of the best passes I've honestly ever seen, with a blitz in your face. You let it go before the receiver had even come out of the backfield and lofted. I want to say it was to a tight end, but I can't remember. I posted this a few years ago, but
Cameron Mora, I still think he scored. Cam Mora out of Cal. Yes. He was a good player. He was kind of a wide receiver type tight end for us. I thought he scored. I think we scored the next play to a different tight end, but I'm not sure if Cam Morris scored a lot of touchdowns. So I was really hoping they would have given him that one. It was a pretty good play. I do believe I got blasted on that play. Yes, and I don't think I saw the play, but like what you do as a quarterback when you get hit, especially at home in Seattle, you get hit, you're laying there and you're just quietly listening. Like, is the crowd cheering or are they, like that? And so I think I remember, if it's the play, I'm on the ground. And I remember just like sitting there, like, and I hear, like this great celebration. I'm like, oh, yes. All right. It's complete. Cause, sometimes you got to anticipate throws. And that was a good one. Cam was a good player. I think he got hurt the next week. And that hurt us in the next playoff game in Chicago. We lost our tight ends.
Well, so I'm just curious, you guys were a under 500 division winning team. Everyone was making this big deal about the Saints, reigning Super Bowl champs, having to go on the road to face an under 500 team. What was the conversation before that game, like amongst the team? Like, how, obviously Pete Carroll's first year. How did you guys get to that week?
It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot of things. Like literally, you could write a book on just like that week. But I think what Pete did is he was so good at like, I don't know, like motivating. And he was like, basically, hey, everyone's going to tell you you're 7-9. You are not 7-9. They're liars. They're wrong. They're bad at math. You are 0-0. And so are they. Like the Saints were world champs last year. They're not world champs this year. That was last year. Saints won that, Saints were whatever they were, 13 and whatever, 12 and whatever. Like, yeah, that was during the season. They're 0-0. You're 0-0. Our goal is to go 1-0. You want to do that in New Orleans? You want to do that here? We can do that here. And it was just like, yeah, we're 0-0. Like every time you do an interview with the media, they'd be like, oh, you're 7-9. We'd sit there and be like, oh, you're bad at math. Pete Carroll said we're 0-0. Like he was so good at that, like so good. But at the same time, like it's fine to say that. You got to actually go do it. You actually got to go find a way to win. And I just remember our offensive coaches that week. They came in. Our offensive coordinator was Jeremy Bates, kind of a loose cannon kind of guy. And he comes in, he's like, hey, listen, you guys are not as talented as this team, not even close. So we're going to have to beat this team with smoke and mirrors. And he just said it like that. And I remember looking at the quarterback coach at the time, Jed Fish, who's now the head coach at UW. And I remember looking at him like, that was like incredibly offensive. Like that was the look I gave. Like, and Jed was kind of like, is he right? He's kind of right. It's like, so, but I think that was one of the great coaching jobs of any like offensive staff that I had been with. They did such a great job of scheming up things that the Saints were really, really good at and using it against them. Greg Williams, really good defensive coordinator. His style is really well known. We did some things that people never do in that game and took advantage of some things. And then guys stepped up and made some big plays too. So it was definitely a really, really fun game to be a part of.
Well, I'm not a quarterback, nor do I play one on TV. But one of the things I assess quarterbacks by is how do they play in the big moments. And Matt, you were a guy that, whether it was that first playoff win in 20-something years where you ran it in, Sean Alexander had been concussed, and you ran it in to beat at the time, the Redskins, or that last playoff game that was Beastquake, and your last playoff game as a Seahawk, you played one of your best games as a Seahawk. It was a pleasure to watch. So appreciate you taking the time, and have a great rest of your week.
I will. Just one last thing. I know we started this talking about Steelers and Pittsburgh fans or whatever. I would say a similar thing about Saints fans. I just ran into a bunch of Saints fans. I did an autograph signing here, signed a bunch of Seahawks stuff. And the people running it were Saints fans. And they were just even now, oh man, that year, we thought it was our year. We just got to get through that wild card game, 7-9, so I do think there's a cool fan connection between some of even the rivalry games. It's pretty cool. So I put the Saints fans in that same category.
I hear you on that. All right, Matt, thanks for coming on. Have a great rest of your week.
All right. You too. See you, Brian.
All right, that is Matt Hasselbeck. It doesn't get better. And we'll be with Matt each week and making some donations to charity on his behalf, which we'll talk about next week as well. But, this is a home game for the Seahawks against the Saints. Another one, not the same kind of situation that there were before, but, it is a great chance. This is not going to be based on variable pricing. This is not going to be one of the most expensive games to go see. This is going to be a game that you really want the Seahawks to win comfortably. That's the next step for this team to kind of establish that they are a tier of team that doesn't just play every game down to the finish. And in fact, they kind of did that a little bit in Pittsburgh. I think there were some things there that make it hard to make that a repeatable template. But I think this is going to be a game you want to see that. And with that in mind, let's talk about one way to get great seats for this game. We're headed towards fall, so I'd love to find some indoor events to attend with my family, which is why I want to give the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and a bunch more. The NFL is officially back, MLB playoffs are around the corner, and the NBA not too far behind. SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale from 1 to 10, so you're getting a good deal. Look for the green dots. Those are the best. Red, not quite as good. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And you know what? It doesn't really matter if you are a Dua Lipa fan or a Benson Boone guy, or who knows, maybe you're a Tate McRae person, but there are great concerts coming your way. Find them on SeatGeek. And I have a code for you guys. You can use code HawkBlogger10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code HawkBlogger10. Make sure you click on the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thanks, SeatGeek. Awesome deal. Click on the link in the description, folks. It'll automatically download the app and add the code to your account. Get yourself a discount on tickets and be there for this game against the Saints. Or if you want to go on the road the Thursday after to Arizona, I'm going to be down there. Go buy tickets to see the Seahawks in Arizona. Get some sunshine down there. So take advantage of that deal. Lots to get to in this one, and I want to start with kind of last night. I don't know how people felt. I was eager to watch Monday Night Football last night, and the first game, Houston versus Tampa. Those are two teams the Seahawks are going to be playing. And we saw Tampa already without Tristan Wirfs, their left tackle. Then they lost Luke Gedeke, their right tackle. Then I think they lost Kalijah Cansey, their defensive tackle, to a pec injury. And that offense looked pretty lethal to start with. And then as the, offensive linemen started going down, Baker Mayfield was taking hits and things kind of ground to a halt. And then on the other side, my God, watching Houston was so triggering as a Seahawks fan. That offensive line, how you go from the worst offensive line in football last year by almost any measure. It was worse than even the Seahawks. Yes, it was worse than the Seahawks offensive line last year. And then you trade away Laramie Tunsil. It was like if the Seahawks had come into this season and traded away Charles Cross, like, why? What are you doing? And then you sign Laken Tomlinson. So you sign a starter from the second or third worst offensive line to be your new starter at left guard. And then you started a rookie at left tackle, Ariante Ursary. I was never a big fan. Like, I saw him down at the Senior Bowl and I got Jermaine Ifedi vibes. I think he's probably going to be better than Jermaine Ifedi, but his pass protection and his balance was just off for me. I just didn't like what I saw. And watching them not only have this absolutely atrocious offensive line, but then also the play calling and the sequencing was just off. Like, why are you doing that? It doesn't really set up the next play call. You're abandoning the run here, but then you're running in this situation where it doesn't make sense to do it. And you've got CJ Stroud, who I think is a good to very good quarterback, especially as a young player. And you've got a defense that is very talented and coached by a good coach, defensive coach, and it's just being wasted. And so, man, like, it was honestly, it was hard for me to watch that game, not only because it got pretty ugly from a football standpoint, but man, it was a real juxtaposition for people that are like, hey, the offensive line's still not that good. Watch Houston play, man. Like, it is a different class of offensive line, and it looks like what we were accustomed to seeing for the past decade in Seattle. And honestly, if you watch back these first two games, that's not what we're seeing so far. Yes, there's a lot of room to get better. I don't think they've arrived or anything like that. But if you can't see the difference between how the offensive line looks now compared to how it's looked over the last few years, I don't know what to tell you. It's pretty striking to me. And then the second game, you get the Geno Smith game. Geno Smith, Pete Carroll's birthday yesterday, apparently. And you guys know, I'm a fan of Geno Smith. I've said multiple times, I think that he is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. And then watching that game last night, I couldn't help but just feel grateful that the Seahawks made the move that they did. I'm not changing my tune about, like, I still am a Geno Smith fan and I still believe he's a very good quarterback, but God, seeing him put the ball in harm's way the way he did, even the balls that didn't get intercepted, it was also triggering. And it also was a juxtaposition for me about, like, did you look at how Sam Darnold, he made a not great throw that got picked off by Jalen Ramsey earlier. But for the most part, Sam Darnold is not making poor decisions with where he's putting the football. And to have Pete Carroll say what he said after that game with the Raiders last night, man, I think that says quite a bit. And as I look here after two games, where does Geno Smith stand in terms of turnover-worthy play rate? He has the seventh highest turnover-worthy play rate among quarterbacks at 5.4%. The only guys that are higher are Jake Browning, Justin Fields, Bo Nix, Tua Tagovailoa, Baker Mayfield, interestingly, and JJ McCarthy. Where does Sam rank? Geno's seventh highest. Sam Darnold's 24th. So if you want to say it in the positive way, like, who ranks the best for having the lowest turnover worthy play rate, Sam Darnold is a top 10 quarterback so far this year, at least in that metric. So that's how I kind of felt. I was like, gosh, those two games helped me have the context of, yeah, I think I know I'm seeing something different. And then, yeah, I'm seeing something different even through 2 weeks than what we saw at the quarterback position, in the play calling with Clint Kubiak, and with the offensive line play. So I don't know. That was kind of an impression I had watching that. Now, I've already started prepping for the Saints matchup. And as I was doing it, I came across a stat that threw me back. And I'm curious what your reaction will be. If I told you the Seahawks have the second most explosive passes on offense in the NFL, would you be surprised? Because they do. And in this case, I'm using the Pete Carroll definition of explosive plays: 16 plus yard passes, 12 plus yard runs. A lot of people use 20 plus yards. I'm telling you the metric I'm using, but 16 plus yard passes. The Seahawks have the second most in the NFL. That was surprising to me, especially for a team that barely passed for 150 yards in the first game of the season. They've been getting some chunk plays there. And I think that belies the notion that it's this conservative offense that is just kind of 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of thing. So anyway, that struck me. There's a couple other bits of sound I wanted to play for you guys from the Mike Macdonald press conference, and then I got a couple things to share with you. So let me pull up the mic sound. First thing I wanted to play here was him talking about Byron Murphy, which let me get that going. And this was interesting. He had a lot of ways he could have talked about Byron, but he was talking about basically yeah, he had a good game, but it's not like he did something different. It's the process that he's been doing, and he's finally getting some results for it. Here's Mike talking about Byron Murphy.
I mean, it's not like he practiced harder this week or he prepared any differently or anything like that. He's doing those things all the time. When I was most fired up about him was to see how happy Jaron Reed is for his success, to see how happy Leo is for him to finally make plays, because those guys are the ones that are working with him and playing next to him all the time. So to see him have the production to back up his work ethic, I thought, and have them be really excited for him, I thought was the coolest part.
Love that from Mike, and good insight there into what's going on in that room. I mean, they've got a young pup in there, and I've learned over the years that when veterans talk up a young player that's, in their room, like a little different than KJ Wright talking up Tedrick Thompson, but you're talking about, for example, when the defensive line for the LOB, the late portion of the LOB, had Frank Clark as a rookie. Frank Clark didn't do much as a rookie that year, but in training camp that season, the defensive players were talking him up quite a bit. Chris Carson was a guy that even as a 7th round rookie, the vets were talking about right away. And so I usually pay attention to that. And Byron Murphy is a guy that certainly earned that respect from the Leonard Williams, from the Jaron Reeds, and from the coaches as well. And so that's where you get this process stuff of a guy that, as I can't remember if I said this yesterday or not, but it's worth saying again, there's only one defensive tackle in the entire NFL that has both 7 or more pass pressures and 7 or more run stops. So this is not the Braden Fisk of the Rams, who is all about pass rush, but is a liability in the run game. This is a guy that is playing his heart out for his teammates as a run defender, taking on double teams, but also being productive. And that's the kind of player that has an even higher ceiling over time. So I think that continues to be a big aspect of this. More stuff here from Mike in just a second. Before I get to it, make sure that you guys check out the Sleeper app. Great place to keep up to date on all things fantasy football, all things any sport, Major League Baseball. The Mariners, 12 games left. They're a half a game in first place. They play tonight. You've got the Astros playing the Rangers, all sorts of stuff going on. Keep track of it in the Sleeper app. Real-time chat with your friends and buddies about everything going on. You get real-time updates, visualization of all the stats. And if you use promo code Hawks, you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. So this next thing I wanted to play was a reaction or a response to a question I asked Mike Macdonald about kind of just football. And it was about this notion of getting back to what I talked about with AJ Barner and in the locker room. And I played for you guys yesterday. You got to have a different front, 3-4 versus 4-3, and from one week to the next. And in one way you'd say, hey, like, let's draw a straight line between the performance that we saw in week 1 and say, hey, they improved in week 2. But how do you account for the variables? Different team, different players, different scheme, different game plan. And as a coach, how do you know where there's real progress versus just, the opponent's changed? And here is what Mike said there.
Well, it's part of the equation, when you're going against an unscouted look or something that you wouldn't have expected, which that happens every week in the NFL. They're allowed to game plan too. And, they're allowed to call whatever they want to call. It's, that's part of the rules. So that's going to be part of your factor of, hey, what's your role in the situation? What's the expectation on what you're trying to get done in that particular play? We take a lot of pride in trying to put our guys in consistent, advantageous positions so they can execute at a higher level. And, as a coach, like, look, I know I take it personally when I ask a guy to do something that is not exactly where he feels like he should be in an advantage. Well, I feel like he's in an advantageous situation. So, but that's how I think about it. And then ultimately, effort and how you play in our style, that's non-negotiable. That won't change based on what the other team's doing.
Good stuff there from Mike. And, a lot of what I got from that was, did you as a coach put them in a position to succeed? And if you did, then it's independent of opponent whether or not the player then succeeded. And so you can see that player week in, week out, potentially with a certain reach block that they have to make. And either they're able to do it or they're not. And did you put them in a position to do it or did you not? That's kind of where he's separating out some of those things. And, hopefully we'll have many more years to kind of learn more about Mike's perspective on these things. But I thought that was an interesting answer. The next thing I asked him was, we know that you guys grade coaches or you grade players every week. How do you go about assessing coaches? And here's what Mike said there.
Process. Just what are the things that we're doing in a game plan mode? What we're thinking about throughout the week. We're thinking about the right things. Are we trying to have answers to the right problems? And then as the game unfolds, how are we identifying what they're doing? And then, the solutions that we're coming up with. And as position coaches, how well your guys play is very indicative of unfortunately, that's the way it is. Great coaches get great players to play great.
Clip that. I mean, I think that's a pretty succinct way of putting it. And it is interesting how much clarity he feels about position coaches and that they're going to be essentially graded based on how their guys played and that they should play great. And if they're not, then that's a reflection of the coach. So, I would love at some point, I'll probably never get this kind of access, but I would love to just understand the mechanics of how they go from game over to getting to the truth of what happened in that game, how much of it was on coaching, how much was on players. When you get into it's about coaching, is it at the game plan level, the scheme level? Is it about adjustments and what did or didn't happen during the game? Is it about a player? Like all that stuff. So I find that fascinating because this is a relentless process when you're in the football season. Like you go from putting 100% of your attention on getting ready for the game coming up to having to assess like all the information you got from the last game. And you still got the emotions of that. And then you got to turn that into not a completely different plan for the week that's coming, but enough learnings that you're kind of saying, all right, we've now seen this not work this many times. Maybe we should change this. So, I mean, I find it a really fascinating, challenging position that is just a runaway train. You cannot stop the schedule. You cannot, ask for an extra minute. You can't call timeout. It's coming. How do you kind of handle that? And it maybe is more interesting to me than it is to other folks, but I find it curious. So a couple other things that came out in Mike Macdonald's press conference yesterday. We heard that Devin Witherspoon has what is being described as an MCL bruise or contusion. People freaked out when I tweeted that, like, oh my God. Well, it doesn't change anything of the outlook. Mike Macdonald is still optimistic that he might be able to play and practice this week, but that's now more information that we know about the situation and the diagnosis. The other thing there is Mike Macdonald has clarified a couple of times that Devin Witherspoon is one of the few guys where if they did take it up to game time and he wasn't to practice that week, that he might be able to play. So Devin Witherspoon's not a guy that Mike Macdonald feels 100% is necessary that he's out there on the practice field. So keep that in mind on the practice report. But he didn't say that he wasn't going to practice. So we'll see about that. He also reiterated that the hope is that Nick Emmanwori can practice this week and that there is a difference between Nick Emmanwori and Devin Witherspoon, that Nick's a rookie and he needs the practice reps and he needs to be able to go through stuff. So if Nick is not practicing, then I think you can be pretty sure he's not going to play this week, where the same might not be true for Devin Witherspoon. He also said that after the game in this post-game press conference, he said that they came out pretty healthy and good. He said yesterday that might not be the case, that there was a couple more guys that popped up on the injury report than they previously thought. Didn't want to say who or what. He said we'd hear more, on Wednesday or Thursday about that. So that's not great. It's not shocking, but not great. And one guy it doesn't seem to be is Derek Hall, since he was asked about Derek Hall and he said he just got nicked up a little bit, but should be fine. So, we'll wait and see on that, who it could be. Don't know. No information there, and this is one of the things, like last week, we didn't know Devin Witherspoon was not going to practice or hurt until Wednesday. He finished that game and played, without knowing that there was any issue going on. So can't say who that's going to be. I think there were, a couple other pieces worth touching on, just thinking back about what's going on with this team and where they're headed for this game against the Saints. One, I shared this. I see someone old school asking about Jalen Sundell. Jalen Sundell was already clarified as just cramps. So now maybe there's something else that comes up, but that was what Mike Macdonald told us after the game. So Jalen Sundell should be fine. I will say I thought Olu played okay and coming in, and in fact I kind of want to see, I don't remember looking at what his grade was, so let's take a look at where Olu graded out for his spot playing time. He had he had 9 snaps, he had a 55.2 grade, he had a 0.0 pass block grade. Yikes. He did have a 68 run grade, which is good. But 0.0 pass block. Now, granted, that was just 3 snaps of pass protection, but not good, especially considering Jalen Sundell had a 57.6 pass block grade, which is not awesome, but it's not 0.0. Anyway, so we'll see what the injuries are. We'll find out soon. All right. So the thing I was going to bring up is I just think special teams and Jay Harbaugh have had a really strong start to the year. And I bring this up because a lot of folks have wanted that guy gone. I tweeted this out this morning, but right now, the Seahawks through 2 weeks, when they're covering kicks, so they're kicking the ball, they are allowing the second fewest yards per kick return in the NFL. So second best kick cover team in the NFL so far. Yards, and that doesn't, include, obviously, they're probably the only kick coverage team to have a touchdown this year. Yards per punt return. So they're allowing the 15th they're ranked 15th in punt return, yards per punt return, which isn't great, but not terrible. But they're top 10 in terms of punts inside the 20-yard line, percentage of punts inside the 20-yard line. So a lot of times they're not giving up returns. When they are returning the ball, the other team's kicking to them, they are top 10 in both. They are 6th in yards per kick return, and they're 9th in yards per punt return. So top 10 return team. And then they have 1 block field goal. They have 1 coverage touchdown, and they're ranked 2nd in the NFL by DVOA. So, I just like to make sure we're challenging some of the narratives out there about things that maybe evidence demonstrates otherwise. I think a lot of people have been down on Jay Harbaugh as a special teams coach. There seem to be some reasons to feel otherwise, at least through 2 games. Let's let this play out, but wanted to make sure I shared some of that. Getting back to kind of the Geno Smith thing, and like, that's not a story that's going to die, and it's going to be a comparison all year. And the first week, there's a lot of folks that are Seahawks fans, but really big Geno fans who were just very vocal about how it was a very bad decision to move on from Geno Smith to save a little bit of money, and go to a Sam Darnold who's not very good, and they're clearly protecting him, and on and on, right? Like, there's a lot of, it wasn't just one person. There were multiple people that were kind of taking a victory lap there. Now this week flips the other direction. Sam Darnold, even though he threw 2 interceptions, had a clearly better game than Geno Smith, who threw 3 interceptions and just was not competitive in how he played that game. And so now people are like, and plus that article comes out, which is just unfortunate. Like, it would have been nice for there to be I think he tried in his own way to have a graceful way to talk about it. And I'm pretty sure Geno Smith put up with some pretty horrific fan interactions, because I saw some of it in the stadium. Seahawks fans just never really embraced him the way that I did, but not every Seahawks fan did. And I can imagine there's some rough feelings, because there's probably some awful, awful things said and done to him while he was here. I wish he would have found a way to kind of separate a little bit more, with a little bit more class. And so that's tough. But here's the thing. End of the day, I've said this a million times. I'm a Seahawks fan. I'm a Seahawks fan above the players. I'm a Seahawks fan above the coaches. I'm a Seahawks fan above the front office. I'm a Seahawks fan above the ownership. Now, I'll root for every one of those groups to succeed and be great, even if I don't personally like them or whatever, because I want the Seahawks to succeed. When they leave the Seahawks, it matters much more whether I like the person and like how they do their job. And I like Geno, so I'm going to keep rooting for Geno. I like Pete. I'm going to keep rooting for Pete. But this kind of weird agenda-driven feeling, like people almost rooting against this change to work, rooting against John Schneider rooting against Mike Macdonald, rooting against Sam Darnold. I don't get it, because in the end, let's say you're right. Let's say you're right and you get to celebrate. Like, look how right I was. Well, you celebrating being right means that the Seahawks are bad and that being a Seahawks fan is not fun. So I learned a long time ago, I will take being wrong and the Seahawks being good over any other combination. Oh, well, me being right and the Seahawks being good is probably my favorite combination, but still, I think you guys get where I'm going. So I don't know. Like, I don't want to turn. I hated when the Seahawks fan base was in a civil war between Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll and all that went on during that time. I hated it. It was my least favorite time as a Seahawks fan. And it's not anywhere close to that, but I do find it disappointing that kind of dynamic has kind of escalated. And I hope the Seahawks just continue playing the way that they did on Sunday and make it kind of a moot point. And I think slowly but surely people will just start talking about the team and not about the past. But it's a process. It is a process. All right, folks, that'll do it for today's episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. If you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. We're like 20 or so people away from 25,000 subscribers on YouTube. Come on, subscribe. If you haven't given us a follow on TikTok or Instagram, please do that as well. And make sure you check out our sponsors, both SeatGeek and Sleeper. Great places with some great deals for you. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. See you soon.